What if everything we know about directing is wrong? September 2018, Burbank, California. Roger Friedman sits in a screening room at Warner Brothers watching raw footage from the Mule. He is 67 years old, one of the most respected film critics in America, 40 years of writing about cinema, analyzing directors, dissecting their methods. He has seen everything Orson Welles, Kubrick, Scorsese, Spielberg. He knows how great directors work, the meticulous planning, the multiple takes, the perfectionism, the control. And then he watches Clint Eastwood direct, and everything he thought he knew shatters. Roger was invited to observe the production as part of a documentary about American filmmakers. He expected standard access, a few days on set, some interviews, polite distance. What he got was something else entirely. Clint gave him unrestricted access. No handlers, no PR managers, no script about what to say or not say. Just an open door and a simple instruction from Clint himself. Watch everything. Tell the truth. Roger arrived on set expecting the usual Hollywood circus. Dozens of producers, assistants running with headsets, directors yelling through megaphones, actors retreating to luxury trailers between takes. But the set of the Mule is different. It is quiet, almost eerily so. There are maybe 30 people total. No chaos, no drama, just focused work. Clint arrives at 6 a.m. He is 88 years old. Most men his age are retired, spending days on golf courses or with grandchildren. But Clint walks onto set like a man half his age. No entourage, no fuss. He carries his own coffee, greets the crew by name, checks the camera setup himself. Roger watches from behind the monitors. His first thought is that this looks more like a small independent film than a major studio production. Where is everyone? Where is the army of assistants? Where is the director of photography arguing about lens choices? Where are the producers hovering, protecting their investment? The first scene of the day is Earl driving his truck through rural Illinois. Bradley Cooper is in the passenger seat, playing a DEA agent. It is a dialogue scene, tension building, Earl realizing the walls are closing in. Roger has read the script. It is a good scene, but it needs work. The dialogue is clunky in places. The pacing is off. Surely Clint will do multiple takes, workshop it, find the right rhythm. Clint calls action. The scene plays out. Bradley delivers his lines with intensity, probing, suspicious. Clint, as Earl, is relaxed, almost playful, deflecting. The tension is palpable. The scene lasts 4 minutes. It is good, not perfect, but good. Clint calls cut. He stands up, walks over to Bradley. They talk quietly for maybe 30 seconds. Roger cannot hear what they are saying. Then Clint walks back. Moving on, he says. The crew starts breaking down the setup. Roger is confused. That was one take. One. No coverage, no alternate angles, no safety. Just one take and done. He approaches the script supervisor, a woman named Linda who has worked with Clint for 20 years. He keeps his voice low, respectful. Excuse me, that was really just one take? Linda does not even look up from her notes. That is how he works. But what if something was wrong? What if the lighting was off, or the focus was soft, or the performance was not quite there? Linda finally looks at him. Her expression is patient, like she has explained this 1,000 times. If something was wrong, Clint would have called for another take. He did not. So it was right. Roger wants to argue, wants to explain that great directors do not work this way. They shoot coverage, they protect themselves in the edit, they explore different options. But Linda has already moved on, and Roger realizes he sounds like a film student arguing with a master craftsman. Over the next 3 days, Roger watches this pattern repeat. Scene after scene, mostly 1 or 2 takes, occasionally 3. Never more than that. No long discussions about motivation, no debates about camera placement, no perfectionist demands for take after take until the actor collapses from exhaustion. Just efficiency, clarity, trust. On day 4, they are shooting a scene in a motel room. Earl is alone, looking at photographs of his family, realizing what he has lost. It is the emotional core of the film. A man confronting his failures, his absence, his inability to be the husband and father he should have been. This is the kind of scene that requires an actor to go deep, to access real pain. This is the kind of scene great directors workshop for hours. Clint sits on the edge of the bed, photographs spread around him. The room is silent. The crew is barely breathing. Roger can feel the weight of the moment. Everyone knows this is important. Clint picks up a photograph. His daughter's wedding. He was not there. He was on the road, delivering flowers, making money, telling himself he was providing when really he was just running. Clint's face does not move much. There is no big emotional breakdown, no crying, no theatrics. Just a tightening around his eyes, a slight slump in his shoulders. The weight of decades of absence settling onto him. It lasts maybe 20 seconds. Then Clint puts the photograph down, stands up, walks to the window. The scene is over. Clint calls cut. That is good. Let us move on. The crew starts resetting. Roger sits there stunned. That was one take. One. And it was perfect. Not technically perfect, emotionally perfect. Real, raw, honest. The kind of moment film schools study. And Clint did it in one take. That night, Roger cannot sleep. He keeps replaying what he saw. Clint Eastwood, 88 years old, delivering a masterclass in restraint. No preparation, no warm-up takes, no discussion. Just showing up and being present. Roger has spent 40 years writing about cinema. He has analyzed thousands of performances, dissected countless directing choices. He thought he understood how great films were made, but watching Clint work, he realizes he has been looking at filmmaking wrong. He has been obsessed with the process, the technique, the tools. He has been celebrating directors who agonize over every frame, who demand perfection, who shoot 50 takes to get one moment right. He has confused suffering with art, complexity with depth. Clint does not suffer for his art. He does not make his actors suffer. He just works, clearly, efficiently, with absolute confidence in his choices. And somehow, that confidence translates to the screen. His films feel alive, spontaneous, real. Because they are real. He is not manufacturing emotion. He is capturing it. The next morning, Roger asks to speak with Clint privately. They sit in Clint's trailer. It is sparse, functional, no awards on display, no photographs of famous collaborators, just a chair, a small table, a script. Roger has prepared questions, thoughtful inquiries about Clint's process, his philosophy, his approach to directing. But sitting across from Clint, the questions feel hollow, academic. "Why do you only do 1 or 2 takes?" Roger asks. Clint looks at him. His expression is neutral, but there is something behind his eyes. Curiosity, maybe, or amusement. "Because that is usually all you need," Clint says. "The first take has something the 10th take does not." What is that? Life. By the 10th take, everyone is thinking too much. The actors are in their heads, the crew is bored, the moment is dead. But the first take, that is when people are present, when they are reacting honestly, when something real can happen. Roger writes this down, then stops. But what if the first take is not good? What if the actor is not ready, or the lighting is wrong, or something unexpected happens? Then we do another take. But most of the time, people are ready. I hire professionals. I trust them to show up prepared. And they do, because they know I am not going to waste their time with 30 takes. Roger sits with this. It sounds simple, almost naive, but there is something underneath it. A respect for the people Clint works with, a belief that they are capable, that they do not need to be micromanaged or coddled or pushed to their breaking point. "What about coverage?" Roger asks. Most directors shoot the same scene from multiple angles to protect themselves in the edit. Clint shakes his head slightly. "I know what I want before we start shooting. I have blocked the scene, figured out the camera placement, made my choices. So why shoot angles I know I am not going to use? That is just wasting time and money. But what if you change your mind in the edit? What if you realize you need a different angle? Then I live with my choice. Filmmaking is about making decisions and committing to them. You cannot be afraid of being wrong. Roger leans back. This is the opposite of everything he has been taught about great directing. The auteurs he admires, Kubrick, Fincher, they shoot mountains of footage. They explore every possibility, protect themselves with options. Clint does not protect himself. He commits. That afternoon, they shoot a scene with Clint and Diane Wiest. She plays Earl's ex-wife, a woman who has spent decades living with his absence. They are sitting at a kitchen table. Years of resentment and love tangled together. The dialogue is sharp, honest, painful. Roger watches from the monitors. Clint calls action. The scene unfolds. Diane is brilliant, controlled fury, and heartbreak. Clint matches her, not with big emotions, but with stillness, with the weight of a man who knows he has failed and cannot fix it. The scene is 3 minutes long. It is devastating. Clint calls cut. He looks at Diane. That was beautiful. Thank you. Diane smiles, but her eyes are wet. That is it? That is it. But Clint, I can give you more. I know you could. You are an incredible actor, but you do not need to give me more. What you just did was perfect. Why would I ask you to do it again? Diane nods slowly. She understands. Clint is not being lazy or careless. He is trusting her, honoring her work, and that trust means everything. Roger realizes something in that moment. Clint's minimalism is not about saving time or money. It is about respect. He respects his actors enough to trust their first instinct. He respects his crew enough to make clear decisions so they are not standing around for hours. He respects the audience enough to let moments breathe, to not over-explain, to trust that people are smart enough to understand subtext. On the final day of Roger's visit, he watches Clint shoot the last scene of the film. Earl alone in a prison cell, accepting the consequences of his choices. No redemption arc, no dramatic speech, just a man sitting with his failures. It is the kind of ending Hollywood usually does not allow. Audiences want resolution, catharsis, hope. But Clint does not give them that. He gives them truth. And somehow that is more satisfying than any manufactured uplift. After the take, the crew applauds, not because it is the last day, but because they have witnessed something rare. A director who trusts them, respects them, does not waste their time. Clint thanks everyone, short and sincere. Then he walks off set. No celebration, no wrap party announcement, just back to work editing, shaping, finishing. Roger leaves the set that evening feeling unsettled. He has spent 40 years building a framework for understanding great filmmaking. And in 5 days, Clint Eastwood has dismantled it. Not with arguments or explanations, just by working, by showing that sometimes the most radical thing you can do is trust people, make clear choices, and move forward without fear. 3 months later, Roger publishes his essay, The Most Radical Director in Hollywood. It is not a traditional review. It is a confession. I have been wrong about Clint Eastwood for 30 years, he writes. I dismissed his work as simple, his style as minimalist, his approach as old-fashioned. I was looking for complexity, for anguish, for the visible suffering that we have been trained to associate with great art. But watching Clint work, I realized that simplicity is not the absence of complexity. It is complexity distilled. It is having the confidence to remove everything that does not serve the story, to trust that less is actually more. The essay goes viral. Other critics push back. They accuse Roger of sentimentality, of being seduced by access, of abandoning critical rigor. But Roger does not back down. He has seen something real, and he refuses to unsee it. One critic, a younger woman named Sarah Chen from The New Yorker, writes a response. Roger Friedman has confused efficiency with artistry. Clint Eastwood's method works for him, but it is not revolutionary. It is simply fast. And sometimes fast is just fast. Roger reads the response. He understands it. He would have written the same thing 6 months ago. But Sarah has not watched Clint work. She has not seen the care underneath the speed, the precision underneath the simplicity. She has not felt what it is like to be in a room where everyone trusts each other enough to get it right the first time. Years later, Roger is asked to appear on a panel about directing. The other panelists are film professors, scholars, critics. They are discussing the great auteurs. Someone mentions Kubrick's obsessive perfectionism, 127 takes for one scene in The Shining. Everyone nods appreciatively. That is what dedication looks like. That is what it takes to make great art. Roger listens, then speaks. What if perfectionism is not dedication? What if it is fear? Fear of commitment, fear of being wrong, fear of trusting your collaborators. The room goes quiet. "What are you saying?" one of the professors asks. Roger leans forward. "I am saying that doing 127 takes might produce a great scene. But it also exhausts everyone involved. It makes actors second-guess themselves. It creates an environment of anxiety and doubt. And maybe, just maybe, that anxiety gets into the film. Maybe that is why so many perfectionist films feel cold, airless, controlled. Because they are. Because the director never trusted anyone, never let go, never allowed life to enter the frame. But Clint Eastwood does one take, and his films feel alive. Because they are. Because he trusts people. Because he is not afraid of being wrong. Because he understands that filmmaking is not about control. It is about collaboration, clarity, commitment. The panel moderator tries to move on, but someone in the audience raises their hand. "Are you saying Clint Eastwood is a better director than Stanley Kubrick?" Roger pauses. "No. I am saying they are different. Kubrick's method worked for him, created masterpieces. But we have spent 50 years worshiping that method, teaching young directors that real artistry requires suffering. And I think that is wrong. I think we have confused process with outcome. I think we have celebrated directors who make everyone miserable and called it genius. And I think Clint Eastwood, who shows up, does his job with respect and efficiency, and goes home, might actually be the more radical artist." The documentary about American filmmakers is released in 2019. Roger's section is honest, raw. He talks about what he learned watching Clint, how it changed his understanding of cinema, how it made him question everything he thought he knew. The documentary is well received, but Roger's segment generates controversy. Some critics praise his honesty. Others accuse him of hagiography. Roger does not care. He has said what he needed to say. In 2020, Roger is diagnosed with cancer. Stage 4. The prognosis is not good. He has maybe a year, maybe less. He thinks about his legacy, about the 40 years of reviews and essays. What will people remember? That he was smart? That he had good taste? That he could write clever sentences about films? He writes one more essay. It is short, published on his personal blog. The title is simple: What Clint Taught Me. He writes about fear, about how critics spend their careers being afraid of being wrong, afraid of missing something important, afraid of praising the wrong film or dismissing the wrong director, and how that fear makes them defensive, intellectual, removed. He writes about watching Clint work without fear, making choices without hesitation, trusting people without doubt. And he writes that if he could do his career over, he would try to write the way Clint directs. Clearly, honestly, without fear. The essay is read by 200,000 people. Clint sees it. He does not make a public statement, does not post on social media. But he sends Roger a letter. Handwritten. Thank you for watching. Thank you for understanding. Thank you for being honest. Keep fighting. Roger frames the letter. It sits on his desk. When people visit, they ask about it. Roger tells them the story. About 5 days in 2018, about having everything he believed challenged, about learning that sometimes the most radical act is simply trusting people and doing your job well. Roger passes away in early 2021. His obituary mentions his decades of criticism, his awards, his influence. But the story people share is about Clint, about an old critic humbled by an older director, about the moment when intellectual certainty met simple truth and broke. That is who Clint Eastwood is. Not just a director, but a teacher, not through lectures or master classes, but through example, through showing up, doing the work, trusting people, making clear choices. Through proving that you do not need to make people suffer to create art. You just need to respect them, prepare properly, and commit to your decisions. Film schools still teach the perfectionist model. They still celebrate directors who do 50 takes, who agonize over every detail, who treat filmmaking like war. And maybe that works for some people. But Roger Friedman watched Clint Eastwood direct for 5 days, and he learned that there is another way, a quieter way, a way built on trust, efficiency, respect, a way that produces films that feel alive because they are made by people who are allowed to be alive, allowed to be human, allowed to get it right the first time, because someone believed they could. In that screening room in 2018, Roger watched raw footage and saw something that broke his framework, saw a director working without fear, without ego, without the need to prove anything. Just an 88-year-old man who knows his craft so completely that he can make it look simple. And simplicity, Roger realized, is the ultimate sophistication. Not because it is easy, but because it requires such absolute mastery that you can strip away everything that does not matter. That is the most radical look at Clint Eastwood. Not through analysis or theory, but through witness. Through watching him work and realizing that everything we celebrate about difficult, demanding perfectionist directors might be wrong. That maybe the real artists are the ones who make it look easy, who trust their collaborators, who do not need to suffer to create something true, who understand that filmmaking is not about control. It is about clarity, commitment, respect. And somewhere in editing rooms and on film sets, young directors are learning the wrong lessons, learning that great art requires pain, that you need to push people to their breaking point, that 50 takes is better than one. But if they were paying attention, if they were watching Clint, they would learn something different. That confidence is more powerful than anxiety. That trust produces better results than control. That doing one take right is more impressive than doing 50 takes wrong. That is Clint Eastwood's legacy. Not just the films, though those matter. But the method, the proof that you can make masterpieces without making people miserable, that you can be efficient without being careless, that you can trust people without being naive, that simplicity is not weakness, it is strength. The strength to know what matters and the courage to remove everything else. Roger Friedman spent 40 years as a critic, but those 5 days watching Clint work taught him more than 4 decades of analysis. Taught him that sometimes the most radical thing you can do is exactly what Clint does. Show up, do your job well, trust people, commit to your choices, and move forward. No fear, no fuss, no waste. Just work. Clear, honest, respectful work. And somehow that is more revolutionary than anything the perfectionist authors have ever done.